It began with a mistake that could have ended a mission nearly 50 years in the making. NASA's engineers accidentally sent a wrong signal to Voyager 2, and for almost 10 days, the spacecraft went silent. Losing contact with a probe that far from home is no small thing. Voyager 2 is almost 20 billion kilometers away from Earth, and at that kind of distance, communication is slow and fragile. Every signal takes more than 18 hours to travel one way. Experts knew the chances of fixing the situation were slim, but they also knew that Voyager 2 had defied the odds before. This story didn't begin with silence. It began with something strange, something that made the people at NASA stop what they were doing and pay attention. On the far edges of our solar system, Voyager 2 did something it wasn't designed to do. It turned. That movement raised questions no one was ready to answer. Was it a harmless system glitch? Or had Voyager 2 encountered something unexpected, something that could confirm one of NASA's deepest and most unsettling possibilities, that we were never truly alone out there? When the spacecraft finally sent back its first message from interstellar space, it wasn't just routine data. It was something strange, something that felt like more than numbers on a screen. To understand why this shook NASA so deeply, we have to go back in time and follow the journey of a small, car-sized machine that has been calling home for nearly 5 decades. A probe that has traveled farther than any human-made object except its twin, Voyager 1. Voyager 2's life began in an era that now feels like a different world. Phones had cords. Computers filled entire rooms. Digital memory was laughably small compared to today's devices. In August 1977, Voyager 2 left Earth aboard a Titan Centaur rocket. It wasn't the most powerful or advanced machine by today's standards. In fact, it had less memory than a cheap calculator. Its onboard computer had just 256 kilobytes of memory, and it transmitted signals using less than 23 watts of power, the kind of power a refrigerator light bulb uses. And yet, for its time, it represented the height of human engineering and ambition. It was built with one purpose: to travel farther than any spacecraft had ever gone, collecting data as it went, and never coming back. For nearly 50 years, Voyager 2 has kept moving forward. Its path has taken it past some of the most breathtaking sights in the solar system: Jupiter's swirling storms, Saturn's shimmering rings, the icy blue mystery of Uranus, and the distant, windswept beauty of Neptune. At each stop, it sent home discoveries that rewrote the textbooks. At Jupiter, it revealed a faint ring around the giant planet and spotted a previously unknown moon named Adraste. At Uranus, it discovered 10 new moons and 2 new rings. At Neptune, it found 5 moons, 4 rings, and a massive dark storm the size of Earth swirling in the planet's atmosphere. After its final planetary flyby in 1989, Voyager 2 didn't slow down. It continued toward the edge of the solar system, eventually crossing into interstellar space, the uncharted territory beyond the influence of our Sun. It became the only spacecraft to have visited both of the ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, and just the second to cross the heliopause, the invisible boundary where the solar wind from the Sun gives way to the plasma and particles of the galaxy beyond. Attached to Voyager 2's side is a small but fascinating artifact: the Golden Record. This gold-plated disc contains sounds and images chosen to represent the diversity of life and culture on Earth: greetings in multiple languages, music from different cultures, the sound of a baby crying, the noise of wind and thunder, and more. It was meant as a message in a bottle for whoever, or whatever, might one day find the spacecraft drifting in the cosmic ocean. In May 2025, more than 20.8 billion kilometers from home, Voyager 2 sent back something unexpected. It wasn't the usual stream of data. It wasn't static or meaningless noise. It was a signal so unusual that it made scientists sit up straight and stare at their screens. Voyager 2 was still alive, and it had noticed something it wasn't supposed to find. Whatever it had detected didn't fit into any of the models or predictions scientists had drawn up for the edge of the solar system. It was like hearing a whisper in a place you believed was completely silent. This wasn't the first time Voyager 2 had surprised the world. Its journey through the outer planets in the late 1970s and 1980s had already transformed our understanding of the solar system. In July 1979, it reached Jupiter. The images it sent back showed storms bigger than Earth swirling in the giant planet's atmosphere. It captured volcanic eruptions on Jupiter's moon Io, where lava spewed into space in ways no one had imagined. In August 1981, it reached Saturn and revealed that the planet's rings were far more complex than anyone thought, delicate structures shaped by hidden moons and strange gravitational effects. In January 1986, Voyager 2 arrived at Uranus and showed a planet tipped on its side, with a magnetic field unlike any other in the solar system. Then, in August 1989, it made its final planetary stop at Neptune, revealing a deep blue world with raging storms and a moon, Triton, that was blasting geysers of ice into space. After leaving Neptune, Voyager 2 entered a phase of its mission that was never guaranteed, the long, slow drift toward interstellar space. It crossed the heliopause on November 5, 2018. Scientists had expected this boundary to be smooth and predictable, but Voyager 2 found something else entirely. The interstellar medium outside the heliopause was denser than expected, filled with plasma thicker than anything inside the solar bubble. Magnetic fields were twisted and misaligned. The cosmic rays hitting the spacecraft spiked in strange, unpredictable patterns. For the first time, Voyager 2 was truly beyond the sun's protection. It was in a place where the familiar rules of the solar system no longer applied. There was no solar wind, no comforting background hum, just the raw, unpredictable forces of deep space. Some scientists described the region as alive, as if the edge of our solar system was breathing. Then, in 2025, they noticed something even stranger. The cosmic ray readings began to shift in patterns that didn't make sense, as if something was pushing back against the spacecraft. It was almost as if the boundary between our solar system and the galaxy beyond wasn't just a border, it was a warning. Despite the danger, Voyager 2 kept going. And then, without warning, it turned. This maneuver was not part of any planned sequence. It was unexpected, and no one could explain it. That was when the unusual signal came through. But before that, there had been another scare. In March 2020, Voyager 2 went silent. There was no signal, no data, nothing. At first, NASA explained the silence as a result of scheduled maintenance on one of its largest communication antennas, the 70-meter-wide dish at Goldstone, California. They knew communications would be interrupted, but even after the repairs were finished, the silence continued. Weeks turned into months, and concern began to grow inside NASA's deep space network. Engineers started to wonder if Voyager 2's long journey had finally come to an end. After all, the spacecraft was more than 40 years old, and its nuclear power source was running dangerously low. Then, on October 29, 2020, NASA decided to try one more time. They sent a command into the void, a message they weren't sure would be answered. 18 hours later, a signal came back. Voyager 2 was still alive, still listening, and still sending back data. The relief was enormous, but it was also a reminder of how fragile this connection is. Now, years later, that fragile connection has delivered something unexpected, a signal that suggests the edge of our solar system is far stranger and possibly more dangerous than anyone imagined. Whatever Voyager 2 has found out there, it has made scientists rethink what lies beyond the reach of our sun. Maybe the boundary is not just a line in space. Maybe it's something alive, something reacting to what crosses it. Voyager 2 continues its journey into the unknown, carrying with it not just the data from its instruments but also the golden record, a silent message to anyone who might one day find it. Its mission, once expected to last only a few years, has turned into one of the greatest adventures in human history. And now, as it sends back strange and unsettling signals from the darkness, we are reminded that space is not empty. It is full of mysteries, some beautiful, some frightening, and all waiting to be discovered. It came through the darkness of space like a voice breaking a long, unbearable silence. It was loud, clear, and precise. Voyager 2 had spoken again. The stream of data it sent back wasn't just a faint trickle or a garbled transmission, it was a full, confident signal confirming that it had realigned its antenna, executed a command, and against every odd still alive, still working, and still listening. For engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the moment felt like hearing the heartbeat of an old friend they feared was gone forever. Finding the probe's carrier signal meant that Voyager 2 was still broadcasting from more than 20.8 billion kilometers away, far beyond the reach of sunlight's warmth, in the deep black beyond our solar system. That alone should have been the headline, the miracle that the oldest active spacecraft was still holding on after decades in the void. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part came next. When the data began pouring in, it wasn't the usual health checks, trajectory logs, or environmental readings. There were signals from systems that hadn't been active since the early 1980s, long dormant instruments flickering to life as if awakened from a decades-long sleep. These weren't routine status reports, they carried something different. Patterns. Layered pulses. Repeating echoes. Binary signals that seemed to loop on themselves. It didn't look like the probe was simply transmitting, it looked like it was relaying, like it had picked something up and was trying to send it back. Officially, NASA called it radiation interference, maybe background noise, maybe even a glitch in the aging electronics. But behind closed doors, in the dim-lit rooms of JPL, seasoned engineers sat at their consoles with furrowed brows. Some replayed the data streams over and over, running calculations twice, 3 times, just to be certain. Others stared in silence, unable to put words to what they saw. Because this didn't feel like a reboot or a software hiccup, it felt like a wake-up call. And some couldn't shake the suspicion that something out there had placed that call. This wasn't the end of the story. The real shock came after Voyager's sudden turn, something that was never supposed to happen. Spacecraft don't get startled, but Voyager 2 didn't just drift in its endless journey, it turned. A deliberate, measured movement. Like it had seen something. Like it had been spooked. But what could frighten a machine floating in the infinite emptiness of interstellar space? The space beyond the heliosphere is supposed to be nothing but dust, faint radiation, and cold stars. But this movement suggested a boundary, something invisible yet forceful enough to make a spacecraft flinch. It happened in early 2025. Inside NASA's mission control, an alert appeared on Voyager's telemetry feed. Out there, 20.8 billion kilometers from Earth, so far that signals take over 18 hours to arrive, Voyager 2 had made an unplanned movement. Not a malfunction. Not a random spin. A small, precise tilt, the kind you might make if you were trying to avoid eye contact. For a spacecraft built with wiring older than some of the scientists watching over it, powered by a nuclear battery barely strong enough to run a dim desk lamp, this kind of move doesn't just happen. Its thrusters hadn't been fired for any scheduled adjustment. No automatic correction command had been sent. And yet it shifted, subtle but unmistakable. When the data was reviewed, the story got stranger. The magnetometer, a device that had been faithfully recording cosmic magnetic fields since the Carter administration, registered a sudden jolt. Not a slow, graceful curve in the readings, but a sharp spike, jagged and abrupt. And at nearly the same moment, the cosmic ray detectors lit up like warning sirens. Readings skyrocketed, not gradually like they would during a solar storm, but in an instant, as though Voyager had crossed through a sudden invisible shockwave. It wasn't debris. It wasn't a software glitch. The data pointed to something else, an external force. Something had nudged Voyager 2. Not a shove, but a pull. Engineers considered every possible explanation: a rogue comet passing nearby, the magnetic signature of a distant pulsar, even the blast from a neutron star flare. But nothing fit. The readings were too clean, too deliberate, like Voyager had crossed an invisible tripwire in the dark. And then came the part that kept the night shift staring at their screens long after their shifts ended. The turn wasn't random. It matched the timing of the strange pulses now appearing in the data. A measured rhythm, repeating every 61.2 seconds. It wasn't just static, it was a beat. A knock from the dark. This wasn't the gentle, chaotic noise of space. It was sharp. Timed. Consistent. The magnetic field readings jumped in sync with the pulses. The cosmic ray sensors flared as though in response to each beat. It wasn't the kind of signal nature tends to make. And then, the silence. An unnatural kind of silence. The empty space around Voyager seemed stripped clean. No cosmic dust. No drifting debris. No background static. It was like walking into a vast, empty room and realizing there's nothing, not even the echo of your own footsteps. If space is usually a noisy, turbulent ocean of invisible particles, this was a dead zone. Too perfect to be an accident. Some researchers began to suspect that Voyager had encountered a boundary, not a physical wall, but a field. A perimeter. The pulses and the turn weren't coincidences, they were reactions. Almost like something was saying, turn back. But the question no one wanted to say out loud was, what if it wasn't a boundary at all, but a threshold? A gate? If that was the case, the stakes were bigger than anyone wanted to imagine. Because once you cross a threshold, it's not just about what's on the other side, it's about whether it notices you crossing. Voyager 2 had crossed. And something might have noticed. What happened next only deepened the unease. Among the revived instruments was one sending patterns that looked eerily familiar, sequences that mirrored the digits of pi, 3.14159, over and over. A universal constant. A mathematical fingerprint. In human science, pi is one of the most recognized numbers in the universe, something any intelligent species might understand. If the signal was intentional, it was more than a knock, it was a message. Particle readings began arriving that didn't behave like random cosmic rays. Instead of coming from all directions in scattered bursts, they came in focused streams, almost like beams, slamming into Voyager from a single point in space. You don't aim particles by accident. It was as if the solar system wasn't an open expanse anymore, it was a fenced-in yard. And Voyager, in its slow, steady flight, had just nudged the gate. Some theorists inside NASA whispered ideas that would never make it into official press releases. Maybe this wasn't the first time someone, or something, had tried to leave. Maybe there was a perimeter, not to keep outsiders away from us, but to keep us in. The thought was chilling, Earth as a snow globe, being studied from the outside. NASA didn't rush to tell the public everything. Outwardly, they spoke of interference and old instruments behaving unpredictably. Behind the scenes, they tested, retested, and checked their math. But no one could ignore the feeling that something had paid attention. And then there was the question of the golden record. When Voyager 2 was launched in 1977, Carl Sagan and his team decided to send with it a gold-plated copper record containing a portrait of humanity, greetings in 55 languages, music from Bach to Chuck Berry, sounds of whales and rain, diagrams of our anatomy, even the brainwaves of a woman in love. It was meant as a gift, an introduction. A message in a bottle thrown into the cosmic ocean. But now, decades later, the record seemed less like a gift and more like a flare gun. A shining disc bolted to the probe's side, glinting faintly in starlight, a signal to anyone, or anything, with eyes to see. Voyager 2's strange signals, the pulses, the turn, what if they weren't random? What if they were a reply? The fear wasn't that we had sent a message. The fear was that something had answered. And Voyager 2 wasn't built to defend itself or run away. It was just a messenger, exposed and alone. The blackout of July 2023 only added to the mystery. On the 21st of that month, Voyager 2 went silent. The world's scientists waited for a signal that didn't come. The reason, according to NASA, was simple: a human error. A command sent from Earth had accidentally turned the probe's antenna 2 degrees away from us, enough to lose the signal entirely. Desperate, NASA sent what they called an interstellar shout, a powerful signal transmitted from a 70-meter dish in Australia, aimed into the void in hopes of reaching the probe. Days passed. Weeks. Nothing. And then, on August 4th, the impossible happened. Voyager 2 answered. Loud. Clear. Fully intact. Still on course. But after everything else we've seen, that silence no longer feels like an accident. What if those pulses, the ones repeating every 61.2 seconds, were already happening back then? What if the blackout was a test, not by us, but by whatever was on the other side of that threshold? Now, Voyager 2's power is fading fast. Down to just 470 watts, barely enough to keep its instruments running. NASA has shut down systems to stretch its life until 2030, but each year the lights dim. And somewhere beyond the edge of our solar system, something might still be watching. Maybe it's just curiosity. Maybe it's quarantine. Maybe, as some fear, it's something far worse. Because the next time Voyager goes silent, it might not be because we turned away. It might be because something else did.